Good day everyone, my name is James TIARAMON, and today we will be presenting our findings based on the poems Rich and Poor. The gap between the rich and poor expanding, getting bigger by the day. But in a fair and just society, things will never be this way. Those born into a poor family are forsaken by the gods, and if they wish to be successful, they must fight against all odds.
In the slum parts of the city, you will only see decay. Homes and gardens looking shabby, everything look old and grey. 90% live off welfare, and those with jobs work for low pay. And all would choose to be born elsewhere if in their births they had a say.
In the yuppiest part of the city, things are very different there. Brand new homes and well-kept gardens, new cars they drive and new suits they wear. Children of affluent parents, an advantage from the start. The slum end only 3 miles distant, seem a continent apart.
Life is hard and never easy for those from the slum part of town. And it is hard to be successful with others trying to drag you down. Most employers do not want to know you, your address, your enemy. But do not count yourself a failure if you are born into poverty.
The gap between the rich and poor expanding, getting bigger by the day. But in a fair and just society, things will never be this way. Those who speak that all are equal in God's eyes are talking rot. For the people of the slum parts, it would seem by God's forgot.
Good day to Duggan everyone. So moving on to the prominent display of the author. The author, Francis Duggan, is a very well-known person for his famous poems. His magnificent pieces were A January Morning in Knocknagree, A Night in Late Autumn, Like a Beautiful Pink Camellia, Those Marvelous Morris Dancers, Rich and Poor, and so on. He was also famous with his own produced poem which is named as The Victim. He created this poem in conjunction with the World War II. This was a very confronting masterpiece of the torturous Holocaust in World War II. Although the poet has never experienced the Holocaust firsthand, but he had still reflected his thoughts through his personal opinion. He had placed himself in the place of the World War II victims and wrote this poem. In my opinion, I am also astonished on how it could have been as someone who did not experience it, writing it like they have experienced it. I have felt the poem when I read it. His imaginations were extremely beyond everything that could be expected. This goes the same for the rest of the 9,000 poems. It was truly impressive to see someone talented like this. His poems would definitely leave some space in our hearts as we read it. All his poems were mostly heartfelt poems. For instance, Through the Eyes of Erica. From history we have not learned it at all. The land does not belong to the people. Worries like weeds, and many other heart-filling poems. Thank you.
Up next is a brief biography of the author. The author of this poem, Rich and Poor, goes by the name Francis Duggan. Francis Duggan is born on December 1st, 1946, in the town of Mill Street, Cork, in Ireland. Francis Duggan is famous for his over 9,000 poems that he wrote, which has been mentioned by Sharmita in the previous slides. Francis Duggan started to write poems in 1973. After Francis Duggan has been raised in Ireland, he traveled to Australia, and he has been living in Victoria for the past 23 years. I think that is all from me. Moving on to the next slide.
Greetings to Dr. Revati and everyone. Today I'm gonna explain about the theme for the poem Rich and Poor by Francis Duggan. So, the theme that can be found in the poem is the differences between the rich and the poor. This poem shows a huge contrast between the motives, difficulties, and overall lives of the rich and the poor. These elements are compared through their wealth or appearance that depicts their state of happiness, perspectives, and motives in lives. Okay, so moving on. The theme is shown clearly through the entire lines in the poem. For example, the line, "But in a fair and just society, things will never be this way." This line helps to once again point out the obstacles that are faced by the impoverished. Here, we see the desires of the poor. To be honest, who doesn't want to be rich and healthy at the same time? However, this is more achievable by the wealthy people. Next, in the poem, the differences between the wealthy people and those living in poverty include the latter having to live their lives in shabby-looking homes and gardens, while the rich are living in their best lives in brand new homes and well-kept gardens. This can be seen in stanza 2 and 3. The stanza also states that the children with rich parents are born with silver spoon in their mouths, since they are more privileged and advantaged from the start compared to the poor children who have to live off welfare and job with low wages.
Another common issues that can be found from the poem was from the praises and all would choose to be born elsewhere if in their birth they had a say. If is a very interesting choices of word. Some in modern society say that the main differences between the one that end up wealthy and those who live in poverty is if they had the opportunities. Modern wisdom dictates that those who are born into a wealthy family are presented with more opportunities to be successful. That doesn't mean that someone who is poor can take the opportunity as well that are given to them. Obviously, being given more chance to succeed means you are more likely to be succeed. And some people who are born in extreme poverty are only given a few opportunities or maybe none at all. Next, from the praises, home and garden looking shabby, everything look old and grey. The word shabby and looking old and grey in these phrases are particularly powerful. It really does evoke the air of fragility and old. The suggestion being that these were homes that were unstable from the off, which is probably means both literally and figuratively true for some. The repeat of by sounds in the final word of the line as well, which give a symmetry to the line, which elevates and emphasizes on it even more. The phrases, but do not count yourself a failure if you are born into poverty. So what does that mean if you are born poor? Really, it's not up to which family you are born, either into a royal family and never work in your entire life. Either which way, it can never stop a motivated person from being successful. However, if you die poor, it can be your mistake, as it means that you may not have motivation to build your wealth despite having little or nothing.